When do we get our ticket and stuff sent to us?
Right.
It may take up to 24 hours, right?
How much was yours? $353.
Yeah.
How do you avoid a booking fee?
I don't know. I feel like they should just add it. Well, we're booked. So this bike tour actually finished over a year ago. Everything you've watched over the last 9 weeks, both the highs and the lows, happened from July to September in 2024. Which is ironic, because a lot more can happen in a year compared to just 9 weeks. Since getting back, I've moved house, Riley has moved countries, hell, Kelly even got married. Okay, Kelly didn't get married, but still, you get the point. But in this last year, I've spent a lot of my spare time getting this damn vlog edited, which was a great way to relive the memories, like Shandles here having the best sleep of his life on a beach deck chair. But I did consistently find myself wondering what the actual point is of documenting this whole thing. There's obviously been a few good laughs and plenty of good memories, but I do keep thinking that with just 9 weeks, there hasn't actually been anything of great importance to say or some grand story to tell. Sure, there's maybe loosely been a hero's journey. We took a somewhat call to adventure, met a heap of mentors, went through various levels of trial and failure, and by the end of it, had seen how far our comfort zone can go. Of course, along with developing our skills and fortitude and all that. But the returning change part never really hit for me. Like, I don't know, for the last year I kinda just went back to my job, watched movies, played board games, and hung out with my mates. But in the background, whenever I took a moment to edit this thing, I would kind of wonder if, this whole thing is just content for content's sake. But may as well finish that content now.
We woke up, sun's rising, and the co-workers are just setting up around us and they don't care at all. So everything that Shandles was stressing about just didn't matter.
Woke up after a beautiful sleep, and the bloke who was setting it all up gave us a nice wave. Never been more wrong in my life.
So, now our third last day of the tour was ready to get underway. But, on brand for us, it started with yet another flat tyre. Always good to see Shandles in high spirits. But, once underway, our hunt for a breakfast spot began. This hunt resulted in what I can objectively call the greatest pizza in all of Italy. I'm dead serious. It was this tiny little store in the middle of nowhere, and I just remember grabbing a few slices of this eggplant pizza, sitting out front, taking a bite, and just having a moment of like, whoa, what did I just bite into?
Arguably, I think maybe all of our favourite pizza for the trip, and it was just like a takeaway. You buy it by like a square, and I've never done this before, but I think I went back for thirds at this place. Both me and Vincent did. It was like we went in, got 2 slices, came back out, went back in, got 2 more, came back out, went back in, got another 2. It didn't even look like anything crazy. Like it looked like some pretty regular square pizza, but it was unreal.
Definitely the best pizza we had of the whole trip. I think we almost tried every single slice there, and I think the eggplant came out on top.
But, filled up on pizza fuel, it was time to hit the road. Or in this case, the off-road, and start chipping away at our last leg to Rome. But, as has been the case for life on the bike, off-roading got us lost. Trying to avoid a ride through private property, we ended up riding towards the only public access road we could find. Yet another highway. But this time, a guardian angel saved us from our perils. Right as we were about to merge onto the road with cars flying along at 100 km an hour, the most country-looking Italian bloke pulled over and spared us.
Andate a finire sotto montato, là, giù, e via L'Aurelia.
He basically said if we rode back for a bit, we could sneak our way through a farm gate and have no problem avoiding the highway. We said our thanks to our hero, and as he drove off, we couldn't help but notice a, let's call it interesting flag stickered on the back of his car.
He was a nice guy, but I'm not sure he knew what that flag was really all about.
A little quirk. We all have our quirks, and I guess that's his quirk. So this guy helps us. He tells us don't go down that highway, turn around, go the way you came, go through a person's property, go under a ditch, go around a bend, go through this dirt road, and then come back up, and then you'll be 10 meters down the highway, and we listened to him because riding on a highway fucking sucks.
But off-roading meant I was back to fixing a flat tyre, and 10 minutes later, I was fixing yet another one. There was a real ship of thesis vibe going on with my tyres by this point, with patches, tape, and not much rubber holding them together. There really wasn't much left from my week 1 tyres.
Big moments in grand finals. I'm not rolling. And the ball's in the fucking right hands. Let's go.
Vinny had another few more punctures, of course. Had to get me to help him put his wheel back on, but that's pretty standard.
But before getting back on the road, a fellow bike tourer pulled over to ask us about our travels. Turns out she'd basically done a lap of the whole globe, which kind of put our last few months into perspective. But all the stopping meant it was time to lock in and do what we do best: grind out some kilometres.
It was kind of all becoming real that the trip was kind of coming to an end. Mix of like emotions, kind of. It was, you know, I was glad in some ways for it to be over. I'd kind of had a bit of a rough week 8, if I'm honest. But at the same time, I was feeling a little sad, but also, yeah, I don't know how many chances I would get to do a trip this big again. Whilst a lot went wrong, that was kind of like part of the fun of it, I think. Just that process of having to like search for a camp spot every single night in like crowded Italy was getting less and less fun. It was definitely more fun when you're, you know, able to camp in like a beautiful spot next to a river or, you know, up in the mountains, for sure.
It's pretty cool knowing that there's a part of my brain now that can understand saying, yep, we've got 45 kilometres to ride to the beach, and just go, cool, let's lock in for 2 hours and just roll the legs over. And sure enough, those 2 hours got done, and before we knew it, we'd landed at some water to swim at.
Head to the beach that night after a nice day of cycling. I'll tell you, Italian beaches, very pretty, but not as practical as Australian beaches. Very, very rocky, zero sand that we could find at these. Some beaches had sand, I should say, but this one was just like you were walking on fucking glassy rocks to get into the beach, but lovely regardless.
At this point, every sunset was starting to really give me that melancholic vibe of a journey coming to an end, but a lovely dinner is always a handy way to raise the mood, along of course with some tiramisu. But the caffeine overload in Italy was really starting to hit me. I just found it wild how it was completely normal in Italy that after literally every single meal you have, you're expected to have an espresso. But the coffee was probably needed for the upcoming sleep spot search. As noted last week, the parts of Italy that we went through were so densely concentrated that finding even a small bit of public land to rest was a stupidly tough task. We lost a few hours following false suggestions on Google Maps, and by this point, it was getting stupidly late.
Yeah, we just could not find anywhere. We were in the middle of these towns. Separating the towns, it was just all farmland or like private property. That there was no like forested area. There's no hiking area around. Can't find anything.
Yeah, sleeping in Italy is not easy. All the bush that we found, I think, was private, and it was all fenced off or surrounded by housing, so we couldn't go into any of the bush that we found on Google Maps.
But there was kind of just this reserved confidence that something would eventually come up. I mean, it always does. Maybe this was a night worth stressing though, because after another hour of searching, we had to settle on arguably the worst camp of the whole tour. It was straight up just a parking lot under a highway. To go with it, the whole spot was just littered with rubbish.
We kind of give up basically and then just sleep in the beach car park, but in Italian fashion there is kind of like, it's not a lovely beach car park. There's rubbish everywhere, toilet paper just like strewn around. Kind of gross, if I'm honest, but that was the best we could come up with on that night. I remember Shandles having a moment where he's like setting up his tent. He's holding his tent in his hand and he's looking at this like just rubbish that we're about to put our stuff into. And he's like, I can tell he's having a moment where he's like, what am I doing? And he looks over to us, and then I think all of us were just like, fuck it. And we were all setting up our stuff, but he was just frozen. And I remember him saying like, you boys are fucked. Like he was like, this is fucked what we're doing right now.
Honestly, it is rough as fuck. And you boys just set your shit up and just like...
It kind of put it in perspective for me too. I was like, we have fallen from grace a little bit.
But that night, those boys really outdid themselves, really. They found a lovely car park for us to sleep in, nice pile of trash to throw down their mats. It's the first time I've thought, what the actual fuck is going to do? You are not protected from anything. And that really was a moment I'm like, these boys are really numb to what they're doing. They just found some random corner that wasn't really closed in at all. It's just a car park. And just were very happy just to go to bed in the open. At least I put up my tent.
Look, you're part of it. The only thing different is you got a fly sheet.
Yeah, but I'm not. If someone walks over here, they've got to unzip before they... But yeah, those boys were very nonchalant and they just threw their stuff down and were very happy going to sleep there. So yeah, they really outdid themselves that night. Protected by the Cannondale.
That's genius.
If you want a bike with about 8 spokes, it's just you got to take me with you. And please do, because I'm hanging out with 3 maniacs.
Chandles was clearly loving it, but it didn't stop there. Kelly's sleeping pad was also fed up at this point, so decided to pop.
I do have a repair kit, but I'm pretty lazy at this point. Kind of just want to get home, so I kind of just ignored it.
But in the end, without much choice, we laid down, out in the openness of a parking lot in the city. Rome was only one more sleep away.
Vin, did you sleep better last night or tonight?
Maybe tonight, but barely. I feel terrible. So maybe the takeaway from these vlogs is that anyone can do this. Like, I don't know, but all the previous bike tours I'd watched were basically these larger-than-life adventurers. I do look up at all these adventure at their soul, pure-hearted, charismatic, and somehow always really, really good-looking people. Meanwhile, we're just a couple of gingers and one bald dude that hadn't even done as much as one weekend away on the bike. But here we were, waking up in a parking lot, knowing that by the end of the day, we'll have reached Rome. But to say that we achieved it on our own would also be a lie. So, here's a thanks to all the amazing people that helped us out on the way. This literally would have been impossible without you. But let's get on to our last day of cycling into Rome.
Alright, so day 2, week 9 was our ride into Rome. I think it was about 100 Ks. Again, we didn't really look for any bike routes, and we just put Rome in on the maps and just beelined it there.
What I haven't spoken about is those 3 boys really would get in a rhythm. I kind of lost my fresh legs, and those boys would just smash out the Ks. They were just like in a trance. After 20 minutes of riding, I was just gone because I just could not keep up with that rhythm. They were all in perfect sync, just moving along, and I was probably pedaling double what they were, and I still couldn't keep up. So really, in the end, I just gave up and just let them drop me, and I just kept my own pace, which was probably wise.
On our ride into Rome, it genuinely looked like there was some improvised like rubbish tips on the side of the road, and it wasn't pleasant.
I know like illegal dumping probably happens everywhere, but yeah, a bit of a tough sight. Genuinely, both sides of the road were just covered with rubbish all the way up for like a kilometre.
You know, I'm going to be honest, north of Italy had very much impressed me. Rimini, also lovely. Florence was pretty good too. But this last little part was like not the best part of Italy, if I'm honest.
I think my honest observation of Italy to this point, specifically after leaving like the mountain area and just going through the inland part, is almost the opposite of every other country in Europe. Where the other countries I probably preferred being in the smaller towns compared to the bustling tourist cities, Italy didn't have as much going for it away from the big cities. So I don't know, maybe we just went down the wrong tracks, but having said that, the big cities were spectacular. Of course, our final destination of Rome was no different. So while it wasn't really a deliberate choice, more so the fact that it was the cheapest flight back home, the fact we'd get to end our journey in Rome was pretty cool, even if for nothing else than to use the quote, "all roads lead to Rome." So I guess I'll use it. All roads led to Rome. But we didn't really have much time to revel in our accomplishments. With our flights back home only 2 sleeps away, we had the surprisingly stressful task of sourcing some cardboard boxes to fly our bikes back home with.
So we're not looking to buy a bike. We were just wondering, do you have cardboard bike boxes available that we could pack bikes in?
We checked a few places on the way with no luck, so we were now scrambling across the city looking for any store that might have bike boxes. Eventually, a random decathlon gave us the good news and we could come by and pick up our bike boxes the next day. But with time getting away from us, we still wanted to get some dinner in the city before finding a spot to wild camp. So we split off in groups of 2 to find the best dinner spot possible in Rome. But Shandles and me didn't get far, thanks to what was left of my tyres giving up yet again. In hindsight, I probably should have just had a laugh about it at this point, but at the time, I was just fed up. At least Chandles was kind enough to ride off and grab me some pizza for dinner. And hey, carbonara pizza is actually really good. And while a flat tire isn't, getting it back up and running does always feel nice. Now, it should go without saying, finding somewhere to camp for free in the city of Rome isn't exactly easy. So after doing some scanning on Google Maps, we were off to do a bit more night riding. Our first entry point ended up leading us down a dead end, which really isn't ideal when the only way back out is up the steepest hill you've ever seen.
How can you build roads that steep?
Was the downhill at least fun?
But as the search continued, it was a bit of an odd feeling. This would be our final camp of the whole tour, and after so many strange and weird sleeps, this one ended up being actually relatively normal. Still within the inner ring of Rome, we found a nice big park to set up our tents.
I think this was one of the nicest spots in Italy where we free camped. I couldn't be bothered setting up the tent. I kind of checked the weather app and there wasn't any rain, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just put my sleeping pad out. And then about 1 a.m, it starts pouring down with the rain, and I see Vincent, the only one that has his tent up already, poke his head out, and then he goes back in, and then he sticks his hand out with his camera and his other hand out with a flashlight, and he just starts recording us instead of helping. So that was so frustrating to see.
Love that as soon as it started raining, Vinny's camera just popped out of his tent. That's all you saw, just the camera shooting his mates in pain rather than helping, of course.
I've definitely had a lot of different inspiration for the sort of vibe I wanted to have going on in these vlogs, and the movie Stand By Me was right at the top of that list. You know, that vibe of these young kids going out adventuring with nothing more than their youthful confidence to get them by. But for whatever reason, I never truly felt like I was able to recreate that specific feeling here. But anyways, we woke up from our last night of camping in the rain and made our way back into Rome. But after our breakfast, the weather gods didn't want to slow down from the night before, because the heavens opened up on the city. So, looking to get out of the rain, we jumped into our hotel room. Yep, you heard me right, our hotel room. But don't go thinking we suddenly abandoned our no paying for accommodation challenge. We've got way too much pride to give up on that after 9 weeks. If you remember back a week earlier, we got Chandles to sign up for the currency exchanging payment app that the three of us were using, specifically using a referral code. We figured out if 3 people use your referral code and spend enough money, you get a free $145. Knowing we'd need a place to stay in Rome, and with no luck on warm showers, $145 was just enough to get us the worst apartment in the whole city.
We found our hotel, and it was almost funny how shit that hotel was. Because it was actually perfect for us, because what were they going to say? They had the shittest hotel in Rome, and we were just rolling our bikes in, didn't even have water, that place.
Like, we got to this hotel, it's just like one tiny window. You can barely see out of it. The water wasn't even working at this place. So half the reason we got this place is to be able to have a shower. That was something I really took away from it, is some of those hotels you can stay in are just shit, and I would rather camp.
2 beds and no running water, but it looked like luxury to us. The sun eventually cleared, so Chandles and myself trekked through Rome to pick up the bike boxes, which was honestly a bit more difficult than expected.
Me and Vinny went and got the bike boxes and just rolled through on the train with the bike boxes.
But eventually, we got the job done. Before packing up, I took one last moment to ride through Rome and kind of just reflect on all the things that had happened between Paris and here.
Godspeed, all the bakers are done, and they all cut their thumbs and bleed into their buns till they melt away.
But with under 24 hours until our flight, it was time to pack up all our memories. It wasn't all sentimental melancholy though. Packing up a bike is honestly just 90% frustration. But we eventually got it done. So it was time for one last European dinner.
Get some nice pizza in Rome though. That was one thing I think we hadn't skimped out on for this entire trip was, we were more than happy to make sure we got good food. Not fancy food ever, but good food.
We planned to follow dinner up with popping a champagne bottle, which I guess we did, but Riley really wasn't into it, which I don't know what was going on there. Maybe he was just, too emotional deep down.
Riley hates celebrating, so it was just me and Vinny.
But anyways, we went back to bed, set our alarm for 5 a.m, and just like that, the tour was done. So admittedly, getting up at 5 a.m. did suck, but at least we got kind of creative with how we took our bike boxes to the train station. Honestly, those scooters are pretty handy. So after the train ride, we obviously arrived at the airport, and this is where our goodbyes began. The first of which was saying goodbye to Shandles. Following that goodbye, we took a nice long flight to Singapore. And in Singapore is where we got to say our goodbyes to Kelly.
It was definitely a trip of a lifetime. I don't know if I'll ever do anything like this again. I do hope I do, but it just felt so unique the way we went about it.
Lastly, it wasn't Riley and me saying goodbye, but rather hello again to our home in Melbourne.
It was tough to have to give up that life, just waking up and the only worry you have is, where are we going today? Cycling, food, water. It felt very kind of like base living. Hard to have to, give that up and go back to your normal life. The comforts of a nice bed, my nice shower. Well, not that our shower's that nice, but, that make it a bit easier. So, bike trip done.
So what do we make of it all? Yeah, there is truth to the fact that it was only 9 weeks. But, on the other hand, those 9 weeks were going to pass anyways. So, at least we did something pretty cool with them. And in my constant push to make this whole thing fit with the themes of the movie Stand By Me, it was pretty fun to realise that, of course, we couldn't achieve that. The main theme in that movie is the loss of innocence on a bunch of 12-year-olds. We're all in our mid-20s and have had more than enough life experiences to lose our innocence. But maybe, in doing something like this, you can regain it a little bit.
I can't see Kelly.
Yeah, it's silhouette though.
Yeah.
Pretty epic, right?
Yeah.
Back up the cul-de-sac. Come on, do your work. You quit your job again. And your train of thought. If you could do it all again.
Come on, let's go! Oh yes!
Sunday.
Thousand tiny birds singing. If you must, you must. Please let me know
What about you? Hey, stop.
when you've had enough. The white line. The dawn chorus. If you could do it all again. You don't know how much. Pronto, pronto, wash you out. Come on, chop, chop.
It was a good idea. We discovered it's a good idea.
If you could do it all again. Yeah, without a second thought. I don't like leaving. The door shut. I think I missed something. But I'm not sure what. In the middle of the vortex. The wind picked up. Shook up the surface. take a little piece and we break it off.
Let's go! Woo!
It's a bloody record. It's the dawn chorus. If you could do it all again, big deal, so what? Please let me know when you've had enough. It's the last chance. Okay, corral. If you could do it all again, this time with style.
But they are 2 minus 10 is
That's
when we remember in the past minus 10.